will drip feed in. So for those of you that are joining us, you will see I have a wonderful panel here with me today that I am going to get round to introducing you all to shortly. So just to introduce myself, because otherwise I will totally forget that and be talking to you all without having done that. I'm Gabby and I'm Head of Commercial at Three Sided Cube. For those of you that don't know Three Sided Cube, we are a software development agency based on the south coast of England in a place called Bournemouth. And if you've been joining us for the last few minutes, you would have heard all about the weather in Bournemouth. So apologies for that, but it's a very British thing to do, right? And at Three Sided Cube, we're a mission-led organisation. So our mission here is to change millions of lives for the better. It's what motivates us at Three Sided Cube and what all the team signed up for when they joined the Cube family, and what gets them out of bed in the morning to work on the projects that we do. We choose to achieve that mission by building tech for good, because technology is a really powerful tool that has the potential for huge impact and reach. But the tech itself is agnostic. The technology doesn't care if it's used for good or bad, but we choose to work with organizations that are aligned with our mission and have the expertise and audiences to develop projects together where technology can be used as that really key resource to enable more impact and ultimately deliver real positive change to people's lives. So being in that for good world, we understand the power of innovation, and right now with the social and economic problems that we're all facing over the last year or so, innovation is arguably even more important. But there's also a real tough set of challenges that come with innovating. And I think particularly with the disjointed nature of living through a global pandemic and working through one. So all the things that come with working remotely and teams being separated, but also funding feeling even more stretched during this time. We wanted to really understand and learn from experts that are facing these challenges every day, what it really is like innovating in these times, and be able to share those experiences with you all today. So that's why we have this wonderful panel here today, who are a wonderful panel of experts. So I'll quickly introduce everyone, and then we can move into some sort of more deeper introductions where everyone here can tell you a bit more about their role and their experience. So we've got Rachel joining us from WWF, and we've got Jamie, who's joining us from Just Giving, Hannah from Guide Dogs. I love it because I can see you all waving. Ragnar from SOS Children's Villages International joining us from Vienna. And we've got Rich, who is our MD and fierce leader of Three Sided Cube, who's going to be bringing that agency mix and our experience to the questions and the panel discussion. So for everyone joining us at home, there will be a chance for Q&As and questions at the end. We will leave some time for that. So please do get your questions across, and I'm hoping all the panel will be up for sticking around and answering those questions for you. But please do pop them in the Q&A section of the Zoom throughout the session, and if we can sort of bring them through into the conversation as we go along, we will try and do that. But to give you all the reassurance, we will allow some time at the end to get round to those questions as well. And there is the chat facility open, so if you want to say hello to any of the panel or just to each other, feel free to use the chat facility as well. So yes, hello again, wonderful panel. Thank you again so much for joining us today. So it would be great to start with some introductions, and obviously just give everyone a bit more of a chance to hear about yourselves, your organizations, and a bit more about the roles that you do within the organization and how that fits. So I'm just going to work with my screen, because I think, I don't know if everyone's screen's the same, but Hannah, you are at the top of my screen. So I'm going to throw you in and say, Hannah, can you give us a little intro?
Hello, yes, hi, I'm Hannah. I work for Guide Dogs, and I am a digital innovation fundraising partner, the only one in the organisation, and my role has actually come out of the last year. So it is a brand new role to the organisation, and the need was highlighted through the pandemic, as if I can't say that. That's the word of 2020, isn't it? So yeah, it came out of last year because we realised there was a real need to have innovation embedded within the products and the development that we were doing within Guide Dogs. Guide Dogs as a charity, right behind me, a little bit of brand awareness there. We obviously, everyone knows us because of the dogs, but we're more than that. We're about supporting 3 million people who suffer with a loss of vision or blindness across the UK, and there's 250,000 people who get diagnosed with a VI illness each year. So it's about offering them services that can be anything from a guide dog to a sighted guide to a companion, to someone to talk to, really. So offering them services and support as they go through their journey within that community. So yes.
Amazing, thank you so much. So Rachel, you're next on my list.
Hi, yeah, I'm Rachel. My pronouns are she, her and hers. I work as the Senior New Product Development Manager at WWF UK, so the environmental charity. I've been in role coming up to a year, and it was like the role was created and I was first in. And prior to that, I worked in the commercial sector for a large FMCG in both the UK and also over in the US. I was in Nashville, Tennessee for 4 years. So I moved over to the charity sector, really looking just to align my personal values and the issues I feel very passionate about in terms of the challenges we're facing with climate change and the loss of biodiversity, and everything that WWF is looking to combat, and just kind of put all my energy rather than kind of just volunteering on the weekends, but to look at my kind of day-to-day role and how I could align those much better. And yeah, really looking to use a lot of the processes and techniques around innovation and that mindset that's probably a bit more kind of well established in the commercial sector, and looking to bring that into WWF to help us innovate more and better.
Amazing. Great. I've got so many questions already that are coming out of just these introductions alone, so amazing. Jamie?
Yes, hi everyone. Hope everyone's well. I'm Jamie Parkins. I head up the product management team at Just Giving. I think there's a few international guests today. So Just Giving, if you're not aware, we're an online peer-to-peer fundraising platform, the leading one in the UK. If you know of Captain Tom last year, he fundraised on our platform. That should be enough. My role day to day is to lead our team of product managers who are tasked with sort of growing, expanding, and enabling our fundraising and our crowdfunding platform. But historically, myself in my own role, I launched and developed our API platform back in 2010, which really meant that actually Just Giving shifted from just being a website service to actually being a platform. And really our aim then, and why I'm interested today, was to enable other people to innovate. So not just looking upon internal staff, but how do we let people around the world innovate? And that actually led me to then, work with the wonderful guys at Three Sided Cube. Dare I say, we've innovated on a few things in the past together, working with other nonprofits in the space, which has been fantastic. And to date, we've got maybe 6,000 to 7,000 people that have signed up to use our developer platform in some form or other. So there is a community of people that want to do good, which I always find really inspiring, because you always look hard upon yourself, but actually it's really heartening to know that there are other people around the world that want to to make the world a better place. So yeah, that's me.
What a lovely way to finish your introduction, on such a positive note. I love that. Ragnar?
Yeah, hi. Hi everyone, my name is Ragnar Schwung. As mentioned before, I work at SOS Children's Villages International, so I sit in the Vienna office, particularly under fund development and individual giving, more specifically product development. So I kind of heard similar roles here already. And the way that SOS Children's Villages is kind of set up is that we have kind of a headquarters based in Austria, but are also in different markets around the world. And I work specifically on kind of the rollout of more digital or digitalization, also a tough word, Hannah. It's to make sure that just their everything from their donor touch points to optimizing their donor journey is just a bit more digital. SOS Children's Villages is just had its 70-year anniversary, it's just a traditional and a little bit more conservative approach to a lot of its communication. So the way that the innovation also kind of takes place at SOS is something that I'm not only curious to hear about how everyone else is doing it, but I think that's of utmost importance for SOS is to share how everyone is approaching it, whether that's through project management approach or using consultancies or kind of daily tweaks to their daily work. I think the more tools that all of us have, we shouldn't be so scared to innovate. I think that's often something, and maybe we'll get into that later, but I think it's such a nuanced word that people often don't really know where to start, and it can be quite intimidating, especially for an organization like SOS that just has a wide span. So I'm curious just to hear also the discussion between kind of the different sizes of who's here today. So now I'm chatting, just continued. So interrupt me at any point. But yeah, that's me.
It's great. And I think you've kind of highlighted a really important point there, Ragnar, in terms of when we were pulling together this panel. You know, you're all from different sectors, different parts of the organization, you will report into different areas, and actually that's going to make hopefully a really interesting mix of conversations around what innovation is and those challenges and how it fits and what's successful. So, you know, I'm just as excited to hear you speak and work out some of these things. So absolutely. And last but obviously not least, Rich.
Yeah, hi, I'm Rich. I'm the MD at Freeside EQ, and I've been working in digital for about 100 years. And I've come from an advertising background, used to do a lot on digital platforms, selling video games and jeans and fast consumer goods and that kind of thing. And, you know, you spend a lot of time at work, and I kind of had a bit of a thing where I was like, similar to you, Rachel, where it was like, you know what, it'd be good if I was actually trying to make a difference in the world rather than just trying to get people to play more violent video games. So, and that's what we tried to do at Freeside EQ. We tried to use our technical nous to really have that impact. So over the years here, I had a lot of experience working with all kinds of different sizes and shapes of organisations in the For Good world. We worked with corporates as well who are trying to make a difference, and innovation seems to be a constant challenge for all of those organisations and how they do it. And they'll sort of ask us like, how do you guys do it? And I wish I knew, because we have to do it internally as well. We have to make sure that we're always on the cutting edge of the technology we can provide. You know, mobile's great, but it's been around for quite a long time now, and it's not going to be around forever. So if we want to keep having that impact, we need to make sure we're always one step ahead. So it's always fascinating to hear how you guys work in this space and how you develop and make sure you are ahead of the curve as well. Because particularly, I think there's challenges that you guys have that certainly like the corporate world doesn't have around funding and that kind of thing, because, you know, it's almost so much more important that you guys are making sure you're getting ROI on everything you do, because really you're not spending your money, it's your donors' money. So super psyched for today.
Cool. Well, thank you, everyone. And I think, you know, that's a really cool point, and actually probably quite a good starting point for our discussion today is maybe if we look at those challenges of innovation and actually what those are for you, whether that's personally in your experience. I know, as Rachel said, you know, most of you have worked in different organizations and across different sectors. So, you know, don't feel like it has to be for the organization you're working at currently, but like challenges you've personally faced when innovating, and also how you overcome those, because in true Jamie style, I think we want to come out with some positivities as well. So yeah, I mean, Rachel, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, it's absolutely challenging, and it's such a kind of widespreading world that people just interpret it very different ways. I think one of the challenges that I find is how to just make sure that I'm not creating new products and new things that I like, because why wouldn't I? I'm working on it. but then it's like, or even that my team who I work with, who are all based in the southeast, we all have degrees, but if we all like it, why not? Or even then within WWF, that's the real test, right? Of kind of, if we take it to the organization and stakeholders, like, oh, right, will they like it? And yes, that's great, so let's do it. But then it's still, well, that's still a very narrow audience that we have talked about this innovation with. And so it's not necessarily going to be the best thing. And so what we kind of really always come back to is make sure you understand your audience and their needs and the situation that they're in. And so that's how you can kind of, by talking to them, understanding them, sharing the innovation process, do your prototyping, do your testing, like that iterative thing. That's what I think kind of can really help overcome those challenges of innovation not being just this personal, I've had an idea, I think we should do it, kind of whether it succeeds or not is a reflection on my own kind of skills. And then if it doesn't, that's kind of, I'm not going to try anymore because it's really tough. So I think that kind of, yeah, always going back to the audience and your consumer and kind of going through that process, I find really helps just people kind of take a step back, get that bigger picture, and just be much more kind of innovative and wider thinking in their approach.
Hannah, I feel like you're...
Yeah. Well, I would completely agree with that. And the way we kind of, or I try and combat that, is we've got some quite clear objectives, you know, and as we've all said, we've come from different sectors. I came from hedge funds before, where I was allowed free range to do what I wanted to do, you know, and try as many things as I wanted to do and fail at as many things as I wanted to do. We don't have that luxury, you know, because it's not our money. So the objectives that we have within the area that I support at Guide Dogs, you know we need to diversify our income base. I mean, you hear that all the time across charities. We know also that we need to move away from a reliance on direct debit, and actually having those structured objectives as a starting point for innovation really help hone our decision making. Something else that I've really worked hard on this year is to try and get away from reactive innovation. You know, oh God, we saw it last year, didn't we? We've got to get this online. You know, we need to make this virtual. We need to be doing X, Y, and Z. Actually, again, what is the objective of that? You know, and actually, are we developing something that can truly continue to iterate upon, that we can truly continue to iterate upon? Because if it's just going to be a flash in the pan to plug a gap, either in income or engagement, is that got value? Has that got value in spending the time, the resource, the effort of the organisation, which we know it does take, you know, and to get that buy-in as well, people need to see that we're working on something that's really going to make a long-term difference and not just be a flash in the pan. You know, I think we have got much better internally at Guide Dogs at getting things up and running quickly. So, you know, a small test, a prototype, how it's going to develop, but really having that product roadmap for each of the products that we develop. Where could it get to? Who are we talking to? What is the next iteration? You know, and being really clear with stakeholders about that, not letting things settle and just be like, right, that's it, on to the next. Actually, what are those learnings? What could we develop? What can we keep moving forwards? And that's really helped get us away from that reactive innovation, I would say, where it is someone coming to you, oh God, we need this, you know, we must be doing this, I've seen this here, it'll work for us. Actually, what objective is that going back to, you know? And I have to be quite strict with myself, because as you say, Rachel, there's loads of stuff I'd love to do, but it isn't going to work, you know. We don't have the cause, we don't have the audience, we don't have the reach or the impact at the moment, you know. So unless it's going to fit within what we're doing as an organisation, the direction we're going from a strategic perspective, then some things you just have to say no to, you know. And that's sometimes difficult, because you think, oh, I could make this work and it would be amazing, but it wouldn't be amazing for the long-term view of the organisation. So that's something that we've worked really hard on internally.
It's really it's kind of a really interesting point. The fact you've got to sort of leave your ego at the door is really important, and not just be driven by what you want to do, and certainly not have the who's this aimed at? Well, everyone will love that. This
Yeah.
I think, I think that's just to piggyback. Sorry, Richard, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, crack on.
Just to piggyback off of what was said as well by Rachel and Hannah, that I think for us at SOS, it really helped to define, as I mentioned before, innovation is such a nuanced term. It is what you make of it, I think. And I think if you're starting off thinking about it, it's very often, or if you look at it, for example, from like maybe a little bit more of a corporate side, they're often siloed projects, or it seems like it can be a siloed mentality rather than let's integrate these tweaks kind of into our day-to-day work. And what's really helped us, at least at SOS, is that we, similar to Hannah, we took kind of a methodology, like a method approach to it, and said like, these are tools in order to make decisions faster, also to fail and say no, and that's okay to say no as well, to maybe not continue with projects that would have otherwise just been in the pipeline and would have had to be seen to fruition. So I think getting a little bit out of like that box thinking has been really helpful, and getting everyone on the same what would you call it? Kind of the same word use. So what do we mean when we're talking about ideation? What do we mean when we talk about cross-market testing? And testing is huge, right? Going back to our consumer, identifying a problem. I think when a lot of people think innovation, and Richard, this is a little bit like what you said, like if someone's like, oh, well, we saw this be done and we have to repeat it, or let's use QR codes. And that seems quite innovative because it's like a one singular thing. But I think the approach that we've tried to take a little bit is more go back to problems, like actually identify the problem and work from that rather than all these cool popping up ideas, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's, Jamie, I see you nodding at me. Maybe you can add to that.
Well, I was going to say, I certainly concur with Hannah about the measurement. Know what number you want to be moving ultimately, because otherwise it doesn't matter how flashy or good or it feels and looks. If you're not moving the number that's going to mean ultimate success, then has it been a worthwhile venture? So happy to dig more into that later. And then Ragnar, interestingly, I think 2 or 3 of you have sort of said, oh, innovation, it's challenging. I mean, I would argue for the sake of our audience today that, if we actually look at the definition of innovation, and I looked it up, it's the use of a new idea or a method, right? That's quite a simple pared back statement. And I think sometimes people, they think innovation, we go straight to Elon Musk, right? And space rockets, and we go straight to Richard Branson and the Hyperloop. When actually innovation can actually just mean taking an existing idea. So, standing on the shoulders of giants, really, taking an existing idea and twisting it or spinning it for your own use. And I think, I love the fact that you've called this innovation today, but I would challenge the fact that that could be a term that sometimes I think puts people off internally. And naturally you get these teams that spin up, engineers, product managers, designers, we naturally are cut in that way perhaps. So we gravitate towards that term. But, why can't the finance team be innovating and making change within your organization? Why can't customer support or those that are, on the front line in sort of speaking to your customers or users, why can't they be seen as innovating? So I just wanted to let the audience sort of know that don't be put off by the sort of hyperbole and the exciting terms. The idea doesn't have to be light years ahead of the curve. It can, it's absolutely okay to almost be like a pioneer that actually takes an idea that someone else generated and works off that. And I'm happy to talk to a couple of examples where I think Just Giving has been that. I think we've been both the explorers. We took fundraising from paper forms, knocking on people's doors, and we brought that online. Okay, we did that. We were maybe the pioneers in that sense. But I would argue that since then we haven't really innovated truly. What we've done is doubled down on what we're good at, and what we're now trying to do is let the rest of the world be the innovators by just utilizing our platform. So I think just want people to feel comfortable that innovation isn't just owned by the super smart and sort of naturally curious people.
I think that's great.
That's controversial, isn't it?
No, I think it's true.
It's a super interesting point. I mean, it's interesting what a sort of catch-all term innovation is really, because if you look at it into, like you said, you can be innovating in your business process. That can have a huge impact on the way you work and the way you kind of exist. And probably, to be honest, some of the most innovative stuff we've done in the last 18 months is probably around our production processes and how we actually get stuff done. And it's meant that the stuff we produce is much, much more effective. It's not all just the latest technology. You know, there's God knows how many dusty VR headsets there are sat around in innovation labs around the country where someone's bought the thing and gone technology first. It can work, but more often than not, it just leads to you know, a load of expensive technology sat around someone's room, really not being used. But the directors of the organisation ticking a box and going, yeah, we're digital transformers. Look at that. There's a guy down there with an Oculus. So it's really interesting, the kind of broad spectrum you can have. It's cool.
Absolutely. Sorry, no, I'm just going to say we've got some Q&A questions, which I think you're all kind of covering anyway. But actually, Charlie was asking panelists directly, have you found that defining innovation within the business has actually led to more involvement from the company as a whole? So I think that kind of, I suppose, does that challenge your point, Jamie, or support it? Because in terms of creating a culture of innovation, which I think is sort of what we're talking about here, it's sort of having an understanding to an extent, but not a fear. But actually, is it important to define it enough that people have those rails to then fly with it?
I think so. And I can't, forgive me, I can't remember if it was Ragnar or Hannah that talked to it, but I think you need some guardrails for how you want to operate as a business, or teams, silos, groups, units, however, so that you're ultimately successful and you're spending every pound wisely. And I think there are plenty of techniques, you know, Lean Canvas is a good example, ideation of how you can tease ideas from people, or how you can bring people who would naturally maybe, you know, tend to go to the back of the room rather than be at the forefront. So I think there's lots of techniques, there's lots of training, there's lots of cajoling that individuals and teams can do. But yeah, I've worked with organizations that have innovation departments, and what I've always taken away from those where they've been successful is where the innovation department, even though they sit within that organization, they've made themselves very transparent. So the classic case is, you know, they sit in a war room actually with transparent windows so people can see what they're doing, and people feel like they can look in and be curious, but actually that they invite internal people to come into them and to learn. So they're always being open, they're always sharing, whether it's, you know, obviously email and internal communications, but very much of the show and tell. And I think that breaks down that kind of fear of us and them. It breaks down concerns. I think it buys you a lot more internal latitude, because you'll go further when people come along on the story with you. So I think certainly, I mean, cancer research is the example that springs to mind for me, where they were, you know, they invested in an innovation department, and then they made that innovation department totally transparent to the business.
Yeah. And I think that's really interesting, because that kind of leads on from what was being discussed earlier, and actually is another question, but in terms of being able to, like, the go-to methods of measuring the value of impact. And I suppose part of that is having those objectives and processes in place, but also ensuring, as I think you've all kind of answered really well, that, you know, your users and the audiences at the heart of that. But in terms of go-to methods and measuring and getting that buy-in across the organization, like, is there any experiences that we can maybe share and answer that question for Charlie a bit more?
I mean, I don't know how it works in other organisations. I feel quite lucky because I report into a director. So I have a line into ED. I get to present once a month in terms of anything that I think is exciting. I actually think it would be really hard if we had an innovation department within Guide Dogs, because we have different arms of the organisation. Each area has innovation within that, and I think if we made that into a department, that would scare people, because it would be seen as our thing and not their responsibility. And I think the way it works now is people feel empowered to innovate themselves. Exactly, what can they do better, you know, easier? And I think we've touched on a bit here, but, you know, lots of the things we did over the last year were tiny bits of innovation, you know. contactless face-to-face fundraising, you know, like quicker checkouts, things like that, that, you know, aren't groundbreaking innovation. We're not we're not talking about something that, you know, no one else has done, but actually as the organization, those small changes made a real difference. And I think in terms of buy-in, that is the most important thing you can do. You know, people don't want to wait 8 months for a project. They want to see it, they want to see the difference, and then they want to know what's going to come next out of that. That's what I find within Guide Dogs, and particularly within the fundraising teams that I work for. You know, we're looking at things like open banking things now, but we don't want to go really far, you know, to the having to design a whole product. It's about what we can do in the interim to really get people excited within the single gifts team. And something else to consider, obviously everyone I'm sure is absolutely stacked within their organization, so adding in an innovation stream scares people. You know, we're saying we need your time, we need your resource. No, we don't. What can we do within your plans really to become part of their teams? And that's how I think you get buy-in. You know, results, making things easier on people, being quick to market, and showing the impact of that, you know, in line with your objectives. And that for me, it's really simple in those terms.
I mean, I'd echo that. So we for the last, it was about 5 years ago that we really started to think, like, you know, we'd been a startup, so we were kind of sort of naturally innovating all the time. And then when you get into doing more production stuff, it's a classic story really, you tend to lose it a bit, so we really had to focus on it. So it was like, right, we're going to do some innovation stuff, here's your innovation time everybody, it's on the schedule. And I was like, that's done now, that'll be sorted, that's fine, and went on my merry way. And I was actually at I was traveling to, we used to go and talk about how big organizations innovate. I won't give you the full spiel, but we were traveling to it, and I was chatting to the person I was with, and we weren't getting what we wanted out of the innovation stuff, and I was like pulling my hair out, couldn't work out why it was. Went to this this event at a client's and explained to them how they should do their innovation, and it was collaboration and small teams. But one of our key things that I used to talk about was you need the executive level staff. We used to call it a silverback at that level that protects that team and lets it happen and believes in it, and will stop all of the, because there's a whole, from a business point of view, there's a lot of reasons why you wouldn't spend time innovating, because you've got to do your day job, and there's a lot of people that will pull that way, and you need that top level stuff. And I'd said all that, and then got in the car on the way back and went, I should probably do what I've just told everyone to do, shouldn't I? So then we came back and put a load of measurement around it, put some processes around it, and it was up to me. I had to report on it at a board level. So, and then funnily enough, it actually started to happen. So sort of dog fooded it a bit. But yeah, that's the processes, the measurement, but having that top level buy-in is so important to it, because then it gets done.
I would add as well, is that top level buy-in needs to create an environment though where failure is acceptable. Maybe, yeah. And you know, there's lots of books around, you know, sort of failing fast, and you know that becomes kind of the mantra. I think we can lean too much into that, and you know, and sort of be too accepting of things going wrong and not being enough self-critical. But you need to give people that safety net of knowing that it is acceptable for things to fail, or that just that first iteration of that innovative idea fails. Yeah. But you know what? You've got the space and the permission to go back and try it again, tweak it, and then, do you know what? On the third or fourth time, maybe it will work and give you the ROI that you're looking for.
It's kind of interesting, because the flip side of the fail fast is you're supposed to fail fast and learn fast, but everyone kind of forgot the learn fast bit and was just failing all over the place. As long as you're measuring the fact that people are actually learning off the back of it, that's the metric to go after on that thing. Like, it's fine if you cock it all up and nothing comes of it, but what have you learned? Like, what have we learned is a key one.
You guys are just brilliant, because you're just answering so many of the Q&As as you go. So sorry if my eyes keep flicking around, but it's brilliant to hear all of those. In terms of, we've talked a bit about failure, and I guess, and like learning from failure, but in terms of, it would be quite nice to hear like some of the best examples have come out already. I think Hannah's been talking about some of the innovations that have been happening at Guide Dogs over the last sort of period, particularly where you're responding. But it would be great to sort of hear a bit more around other innovations that you've done, and great examples of what's worked. Ragnar, do you want to kick us off? Yeah,
I'm happy to. Just to add on to the that last point as well, what Richard was saying with kind of the silverbacks in the room. I think at least at SOS, and I think if you're either from an organization or where there's a bit of money allocated, something that's really helped for us at least is really, as much as we don't love to outsource everything, I think having someone external stand in the room and speak on behalf of a concept that is sometimes a little bit, be it intimidating or foreign, especially I can speak for SOS, at least in my little sphere, that it is just a little bit more of a conservative work think, and that's totally fine. And that's also, that allows for change. But that's something that's really helped us, is really starting off from the beginning, is we together with the consultancy made even just a playbook, like we have it physical and online, for people just to be familiar with, as I mentioned before, kind of these terms. What does ideation actually mean? What does problem scoping mean? What is a funnel? How do you best use it? Yeah, we've all worked with thousands of sticky notes, I'm sure. So just having something a little bit manual has been a huge help, at least for SOS. And again, outsourcing where it makes sense. And the landscape of innovation consultants, I think that's like the buzzword consultancy. So really just making sure you do a good, thorough kind of search and informing yourself with what exists. It can be quite cluttered, but I think once you work with one or two really good agencies, if anyone else is interested, I'm happy to chat on that as well afterwards. But yeah, one of the best examples that we had, kind of going back to your question, sorry, we've been working anyway with actually together with WWF, Rachel, not us personally, but our organizations. We this year launched an open innovation challenge. So SOS and 13 other INGOs, kind of got together in the same room and sat down virtually, of course, and talked about a way that we can maybe, use a little bit of this online momentum that a lot of 2020 brought, about how we can rethink giving. So as 2020 was a difficult financial year for many people, it obviously also impacted the fundraising world. And we kind of posed the question out into the universe, asking, what are some new ways that we can think about giving? Do we always have to think of this monetary exchange, or do we always have to think of a volunteering exchange? Like maybe there's other ways to think about that. And so in short, for those that are interested, the website is still up. You can go to reimaginingfundraising.org. We had in the end 152 new fundraising ideas submitted and 82 proven concepts. Gabby, I know you guys were one of them. And it was just a great space for everyone to kind of get online, especially looking at cross-market testing. I think that's something that, especially as NPOs or NGOs often do, is that we get shy of kind of the self-cannibalization idea. And that's something that I think that's such a mindset that we kind of need to shake off. And I would say, that was a huge learning for us last year. It's just being more open to cross-market testing, especially within the sector.
I think that's really interesting. And that point about kind of links with what you were saying before, Ragnar, about bringing in externals and having that opportunity to kind of like look outwards and be more open in terms of bringing in different opinions and kind of looking around experiences of open innovation. In terms of other people's experiences, is that an area? I mean, Jamie, that sounds very much like what Just Giving do, for example.
Yeah, I mean, go back to my point, we're 20 years old, we're a bit of a dinosaur. So, we did innovate 20 years ago. As I said, we moved from paper knocking on doors onto online, made it easier. I think in between, we flirted with SMS giving, with Vodafone. I think someone in the panel was asking about where things have failed. I think we rolled out a product that then people just didn't seem to want to engage with, and now that sort of shifted to contactless, and we're trying to sort of be part of that story. I think some things that people can maybe take away is, if you haven't sort of approached innovation internally before, how might you go about it quickly and sort of, and to test that appetite. So, you can run hack days, obviously, either internally or there are agencies that will help you deliver that type of thing. I think they're great for finding out in your business who gets sort of turned on by that sort of idea. I'm not always sold that they necessarily will, give you the next new shiny product that's going to add 10% to your revenue line. Lightning sprints, if you look that up, that's a great way to bring a team together and trying to innovate around an idea or a problem statement and then kind of disband. That's a great way for learning about, again, who's strong in your team, who's got that, who sort of brings their A game to that type of mentality. And then I was thinking, you know, last year for us was a year where actually we tried to really consolidate what we had, right? Because we had a responsibility to make sure our platform was there for non-profits to fundraise on. So actually last year, when it came to innovating, what we did was we just said, well, look, we've got a lot of traffic, we've got a lot of people visiting our site, which is a great way to test ideas very, very quickly, because you'll get validation maybe after 24 hours of whether, you know, the button going to orange or purple, you know, cliche, but whether that has an impact or not. So actually we spent a lot of time last year just what we call optimizing, and you might call that innovating. You know, it'd be interested in other people's thoughts, but we just optimized the hell out of our core journeys. So every time someone comes to our platform, we want them to basically create a fundraising page, donate, or share. That one of those three actions will be very nice, thank you. And so we just did everything we could to try and get more actions out of people. And for us, as a 20-year-old, that was innovating, because actually we moved the needle substantially, and that meant that, you know, people like Guide Dogs hopefully would see more little incremental wins actually turn into donations for them.
I think that's absolutely key. Innovation doesn't always mean reaching a new audience. You know, you've got an audience, you've got an engaged core audience. What can you do with them? You know, and what can you do with the products that you've got? And absolutely, I mean, it's probably an easy win for me, but I often will use optimization as innovation. One, because that's easy for people to understand. You know, we're improving it, we're making it better, we're making it more efficient and effective. That's great, you know, and for the director of fundraising, who is my boss, amazing, because she can see that bottom line increasing, you know. So it doesn't always have to be something brand new and shiny, and particularly around reaching that new audience. I know it's like the holy grail within fundraising. You know, we need to diversify. Actually, let's just go with what we've got and build that one layer out, rather than, you know, here's a whole new cold audience and we need a whole new proposition, a whole new product, whole new journey. That's mind-blowing for people. You know, it is for me. I don't have the time or capacity to build that. So actually, what can we do with what we've got? And that is optimization often. You know, there might be something slightly new in there, and that's great to test and really hang your cap off that, maybe, you know, internally, if that's a battle you need to win. You know, this is what we've done different and this is why we're getting the results. But that's a great place to start, absolutely.
Yeah, that practicality of like the filters that we use, the desirability, which is coming back to, yeah, your audience, consumer knowing, but the really important things are also feasibility and viability. And like, as you've got that diagram, that kind of sweet spot of when you can get all three is things that stick. So yeah, kind of thinking back to my previous life of some innovations that I potentially count as some failures of desirability was great, but then the feasibility, and this was a kind of running it on a factory line of the cleanup after. I wasn't so popular with a lot of the manufacturing guys of having like, there's a beautiful product out the side of it, which like, yeah, people in fact love. But yeah, the kind of feasibility of making it, kind of, there were some red lights there. And then from the viability, that's essentially kind of, does it make money? So from a commercial, it's kind of very profit driven, but even like within the charity sector, like we know that we need to be careful, like we want to be efficient with the investments we're making. So that viability is really, really important still. So what's in that sweet spot? And yeah, they really don't need to be huge, big things. It's and kind of some come through in strongly in other ways. But you do need to be taking all of them into account.
And I think scalability, scalability within that viability mix is paramount, you know. Yes, you can test more, you can prototype more, but if you cannot scale that up, particularly in the marketplace that we're now in, where you know, there isn't much face-to-face engagement, you need that ability to scale and scale quickly, you know. And if you've got a product that is taking someone let's, for example, say 35 minutes to fulfill, you know, in our supporter care team, that's not viable in the longer term if we're really trying to make that into something that's going to increase that ROI and bottom line in fundraising.
Absolutely. And that's super interesting. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to start throwing some of the Q&A questions at you guys. We've got one from Tiffany, and it is, any thoughts on innovation around tech to support equality, diversity and inclusion, linked with Rachel's points about wider audience testing and obviously inclusivity being really, really important there. Rachel, do you want to, as this has got your wonderful name in it?
Yeah, so I mean, it's absolutely something that like hands up with learning. So yeah, that kind of, yeah, diversity, inclusion, it is super important, and we need to be understanding audiences and not just always listening to the loudest and most prevalent voices in the room, or like the equivalent with Zoom now. And yeah, I've kind of, we're going through, we're being very intentional around whether it's with our research and our insights, and making sure that comes through, and really involving the user in the process as well, kind of that co-creation. Like, no one can be an expert in all the different kind of things if you're not there yourself. The real experts are the people living it and the people who are. So yeah, try to kind of create ways that they can be involved, and that's one of the great things that this last year has led to, of like, by using technology and doing remote innovation. And it is hard. Like, I really miss being in a room with people and having a load of post-its on a wall. Like, it will come back, but the benefit is that it's much more, we've now got the tools to have all different people who wouldn't usually be in that room and who may find it hard to be in that room for kind of whatever reason. So yeah, kind of, that's the benefit of a lot of the changes that have come through, that we're kind of trying to start incorporating.
That's wonderful.
I think there's quite an interesting, in the world of inclusivity and diversity and being able, there's something in the sort of blend of anonymity and accountability. So anonymity and privacy, and allowing people to have their own you know, their own sort of personal data that's available online, and making that very private, so it's, you know, it's opaque. But then also the accountability side of that is very important as well, that people, you know, there's a real kind of trade-off there, but between the two. But it's a really I mean, it's a really interesting area. I think personally, one of the biggest risks to it, for the challenges to it from a technical point of view at the moment, is like algorithms and artificial intelligence, because the algorithms come from an institutionally kind of racist society. The algorithms themselves become, you know, they're imbued with that almost unintentionally. So you guys have probably seen the Twitter example where it does the image, it picks the image, yeah. And it will focus on the middle-aged white guy's face. And that's not somebody at Twitter who's decided we only want to show middle-aged white people. It's just based on, it's come from an industry that is predominantly white middle-aged guys, you know. So that's kind of, and it's a really, right now is a real tipping point for that. I think that's something that's really, really the power that algorithms have on all of our lives. That's a really, you know, it's a dangerous thing at the moment, I think, to be honest. Sorry if that might be a bit off topic, but no. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one. I think the way that the ethics involved with the design of any of the software or any of the technology that we used, as sort of Gabby was saying, you know, we definitely believe it's powerful stuff. Great power comes great responsibility. So ethical design of all of it is so key, and being really mindful that you are making it as inclusive as possible. That's on all of us to make sure we do that. And actually, I feel like I'm on a soapbox now, and I promise I'm not, but actually that whole, it's one of the first things that gets forgotten when you're trying to do everything at pace, when you're trying to innovate as fast as possible, and you're saying, bugger all that, let's just get it out there. Actually, it's kind of important. So, you know, there's a trade-off there as well.
Yeah, I'd echo that, Richard, in that you definitely need moments where you where you pause. And quite often, obviously, the concept of a hack, which is often the route towards innovation, is that you're allowed to cut corners. Because you're trying to prove a concept. But I think through an innovation cycle, you do need to punctuate that with points in time where you review what you've done and say, okay, we've learned a lot to get us to here. Is this the right journey? Is this ethically the right steps we want to take? Is this GDPR compliant? Right, that's the world in which we live in now. And so I think again, that's about managing internal expectations, because once people get excited, they'll be like, what's next? What's next? And actually, the worst thing is you do something innovative and you piss off 50% of your user base because you've exposed their data in some god awful way. So I'm painting a very dystopian picture, but I think a good leader in that process will be the brave one that says, actually, right, let's pause for thought here. Let's stop and go, is this the right path? And are we doing it in the right way?
And then also, I mean, just on top of that as well, looking at who your beneficiaries are. At least I can speak on behalf of SOS that obviously children and families and strengthening those families and child safeguarding is at the top of everything that we do and say. At the end of the day, that we can't optimize something, or even if asks are there, the first filter that we have to go through as well is whether or not, of course, on the one hand, GDPR and what we do with our donors' data, but more importantly, what we do with the children and family data. So yeah, Jamie, just to add that, you then not only look at it from like how can we best optimize for who we're serving and who we're getting money from, but also going back to the beneficiary.
I think again, it really circles, for me, what I'm seeing is it really circles back again from having that culture. Like all of these decisions need to be based on having like accountability and mission and values, not just in terms of the innovation, but across all different areas of an organization, in terms of being able to ensure that it's really at the core of what the organization is doing. And many of you joining us from the panel today are, from incredible charities doing incredible things. And, Jamie, you're there, enabling all these incredible fundraising things like Captain Tom. I mean, come on, that's amazing, to do all these incredible things. So, if ethics and diversity and inclusion aren't at the heart of what you're doing, it's kind of missing a huge part of what you've been born from. In terms of just focusing back on Q&As, because I think I could talk to you guys all day, there's quite a few questions coming through around how you measure success and how you measure it against other aspects of the organization, in terms of how you measure innovation across different departments, sales, purpose, growth plan, comms, PR. So I think we've talked a bit about measuring and how you put those rails up, but if anyone's got any kind of more details around how you personally measure innovation success, that would be fantastic. Silence.
I'll just start from the point of view that invest in measurement quite early on. So whether that's time, energy, money, people, whatever that investment looks like, make sure it's there. A/B testing will help you get a long way and will help you win those arguments internally, because ultimately the numbers will stack up and you can make the cogent argument. I can't say I've got much experience of how you might compare and contrast that with other departments. So perhaps others have got more experience on that than I have.
I think you need to know your baseline, don't you? So where are you starting from? If it's a product, what are you pitting yourself against? What area of the business is it comparing against? Is really key. For me, I work within fundraising. So I work with comms and brand in terms of getting the messaging out about what we're doing. But I don't have to be measured, I guess, success-wise against that. If we're honest, fundraising is around income, is around reach, is around engagement, it is around increasing our supporter base. They are our key metrics. That is what most of our products are measured upon. I think it's interesting in terms of the resource that I need. So we work in an agile way in terms of sprint planning. So we do sprint planning every 2 weeks. My work goes into that sprint, and I get to pull resource from across the organisation as and when I need it, which is really key, and means that I'm supported in getting those projects pushed through the organisation, because I think that can be quite challenging at times if you're out there on your own as a team and trying to get the work done, you know, from a development perspective or however that is really, particularly you know, for us personally, about how it links into our CRM and things like that. We need a lot of help development wise. The idea can be fantastic, but you know, it comes down to viability again. How does that actually sit within the organization? So yeah, I have to set out clear objectives at the start of any project, you know, even if that's an optimization. What's my expected uplift, you know, what am I trying to achieve as a in this project, and then I measure against that. So it is about numbers, it is about figures, and it's really transparent, you know, like you say, it either works or it doesn't.
That's great. That's great. Conscious of time, I think we've answered a lot of the questions around gaining buy-in and biggest challenges, which I think came through earlier in the session. But in terms of, we've got one tech newbie with us today, and is asking around any books that you would recommend in terms of things they can go away and read and kind of inform and educate them on innovation. So if anyone has any that they want to like shout out, feel free. Jamie, you look eager.
Sorry, my phone went.
Oh, I thought you were going to say.
Wow. Well, you should answer it.
I was about to lift one up and be like, funny you should ask that.
Me too.
If I was truly innovative, I'd have some sort of digital PA that does that for me, but I haven't. Look, this I actually have this by my. I try and read a chapter a day. I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sold on it at the moment. If you want to learn about Netflix, this is not actually the book for you. I'm sure there's better articles out there. But this is Reed Hastings, the founder of Netflix. And this is a book about, it's called No Rules Rules. And it's a book about building teams that are high performant. And I think, you know, high performant teams will, you would hope, ultimately lead to, you know, innovation within your business or your business trying new things. So I'm finding it quite interesting. It definitely talks a lot about building a culture where failure is acceptable to a degree. Netflix definitely like to fire people, so there be dragons. But that's interesting. I would also personally just say I'm a sports fan, and I find that I take a lot from reading sports books where it's all about teamwork and how, you know, within a team, different characters bring different personalities and different skill sets to the mix. So, you know, for me, that's always been, you know, when I'm either building out teams or investing in teams internally, you know, it's looking at, you know, what are the strengths and idiosyncrasies that people bring that's going to make you an interesting and fun experience. And it's got to be fun, right? Otherwise, you're not going to get, you know, sometimes innovation might be a 6-month-long project, and it needs to be fun and enjoyable as you go through that journey. So, you know, hire for people that are going to make that journey fun.
Absolutely. That's a lovely way to kind of round up. I think in terms of the Q&As, we've hopefully covered everyone's questions in some way, shape or form. But conscious of time, I just wanted to say, if anyone does have any questions, then please, you know, do feel free to reach out. You can get us via the website or LinkedIn. And obviously, we're more than happy to chat to you and answer any questions that you have outside of the session. In terms of what we do, we work with, you know, we work with teams and organizations, like Richard said, you know, to help support that innovation. So if there's an idea you want to run past us or anything like that, you know, please do reach out and get in touch. One more shameless plug from me is that we are actually currently offering a free, new and exclusive UX app audit. So if you do have an existing app that you're looking to see if there's any ways of improving it, perhaps, you know, better resonating with your audiences or looking at overall impact, we use a series of heuristic, and that is another hard word to say, by the way, guys, usability factors to establish how well the app's working and just kind of give some pointers of areas that you could look to drive some more overall impact. So again, please do reach out if that's something that you're looking for. And in terms of just you guys, thank you so much, panel. You've all been amazing, and I feel like we needed another hour to really pick all of your wonderful brains and hear more about what it is that you all do and the experiences. So thank you so much for your time and sharing your experiences so openly with us, and everyone joining at home today. Our next Tech for Good talk is going to be on Tuesday, the 23rd of February, where we'll be discussing circular economy. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. We will be releasing further details really, really soon. And yeah, massive thank you again for everyone that joined us from home and our panelists. Stay safe, keep smiling. I'm not really sure what else to say in this situation. And we really look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Cheers, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye,
Stay
everyone.
well.
Bye.